delighted to be joined today by Alex Hughes, Director of DfMA at HTA Design here in the UK. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, Alex, and for being part of the Prefab Connect event we're hosting this January. It would be great to perhaps start by giving us a short introduction to yourself, please. I think it's always better when you do it yourself than when I try to read a bio or something like that.
Thank you very much for the very kind invitation. My name's Alex Hughes, and as you say, I'm the director of DfMA, which is one of many acronyms that are being used widely now through industry. DfMA stands for Design for Manufacture and Assembly. My background is that I'm an architect. But I actually left architectural practice just over 20 years ago now, and basically retrained as started off as a project manager and was working for a very specialist design and manufacturing and an assembly company where we were developing and introduced really ETFE systems firstly to the UK and Europe, and then around the world, and worked on many prestigious ETFE related projects like the Eden project down in Cornwall, the ETFE project at Terminal 5 at Heathrow here in London. I also worked in Southeast Asia, set up an office in Singapore, worked in Singapore for many years, and closely with our colleagues in China, where we also delivered the 2008 Beijing Water Cube, which was the swimming venue for the Olympics in Beijing. I really had to learn lots of new things as a project manager, and then ultimately became an associate director of the company and was responsible for global project management, and really was designing and developing new ways and innovative ways, which ultimately have developed into this term design for manufacture and assembly, which really was taking very complex three-dimensional engineering and architecture, and then basically converting that into production information for manufacture, which we then took that information through our factories and then made all the ETFE and the aluminium components, and then delivered those to site and assembled them on sites all around the world. So I worked with Vector Foiltech for about 12 years. I then subsequently moved to a cross-laminated timber, a CLT specialist engineer here in London called Urban, and spent several years with them developing their operational and DfMA approaches. Again, specialist timber engineer, but also doing manufacture and also doing the assembly. So worked on many projects here in central London, for example, some 6-7 story CLT superstructure residential developments, both in North and South London, all over the country. And from that CLT experience and the off-site manufacturing experience, I was then asked to join with an organisation called Swan Housing Association here in the UK, who have a development arm of their business called New Living. And Swan Housing Association, one of the biggest housing associations in the UK, and they developed a strategy for creating their own modular product to service their portfolio, which was for housing as well as apartments. And they decided to invest in building a modular factory, which was three-dimensional, volumetric, and we used CLT basically to develop those house and apartment product types. So I spent 3.5 years, I think, with a very small team setting up both the factory out in Essex, east of London, and also developing the systems, the modular systems and design for those products. Spent a few years with those guys setting up that factory and that business and all those processes, and subsequently joined HTA Design about 18 months ago, HTA Design are one of the leading residential architects here in the UK. They've been operating as a practice for over 50 years. I've got several offices around the UK, and it's about just over 230 members of staff now. And I say predominantly architecture, but we're multidisciplinary. So we offer a full range of services, including planning, advice, landscape architecture. But increasingly over the last decade, HTA have really been at the forefront of steering, guiding, and contributing to policy and improvements and change of mindset, really, with regards what we call here in the UK MMC, modern methods of construction, and which obviously underpinning those various approaches, whether it's volumetric or panelized or hybrid, is the design for manufacture and assembly approach. Well, design for manufacture and assembly are now increasingly disassembly or reuse, because the discussion about circular economy is increasingly coming to the fore, and particularly given the recent events of the last 12 months and the global pandemic and COVID-19. And we found ourselves, as a result of that and all that experience, both with HTA and myself, and the current situation, we've now find ourselves increasingly and incredibly busy.
Well, I think, it's so true. And actually, you touched upon so many different things there, and very multicolored backgrounds. But it's the way that we're starting to see the industry go. We're having that sort of convergence of design, manufacture, assembly, installation. Teams are having to come together, think in different ways, learn things about one another that they just hadn't had to do before. And actually, even within, when you were talking, a lot of the terminologies that you were using, come up every day. I obviously speak to so many different people in my week about prefabrication, offsite, modular, and I feel very fortunate to be able to do that. But with each and every person, you find that there's a different word or different terminology that they like to use. Here in the UK, we use MMC quite often. In the US, that isn't a term that's used so much. And actually, I find DfMA is used almost as a synonym for prefabrication, modular, and actually I like to think of it as more of a sort of facilitator of offsite construction, right? They're not the same thing. Design for manufacture and assembly is a design approach, and obviously offsite construction is a construction approach. So just to sort of dive into that and unpack that, I suppose, a little bit. I mean, for you, I mean, how would you describe DfMA? How would you define that to someone? If you were, having to sort of, siphon that off from many other different words that are used in this space.
Sure. Well, I obviously get asked this question quite a lot, actually, Nicole, and it's it's actually quite an important part of my role, really, and it's something, again, that I have been doing really for many years, but which is really actually guiding and talking people through what this process is, because DfMA really for me is it's about a process. The way I normally sort of paraphrase it to sort of help is that it's production friendly design. Okay, it's as simple as that. It's production friendly design, but of course, and for some industries, industry sectors like automotive, aerospace, and even sort of space now as well, increasingly. DfMA is well known. It's not new. It's actually very well developed and mature in a lot of these sectors and businesses. However, the construction industry, certainly here in the UK, but I probably say it applies globally, really, is a very different business. Building houses, places, good places for people to live for long periods of time, in buildings that require insurance and warranties and need to be maintained and looked after. It's not the same as building a car or building an aeroplane, albeit that they may have the same levels of complexity, but just building a house in this different way is a very different proposition, both in terms of the construction industry and the sort of the traditional methods of delivery that we have for building, but also in the way that you approach it from a design perspective. And really, it's essential that that when you are looking at incorporating modern methods of construction, that really you do take on board this DfMA approach, which is to say that for me DfMA, design for manufacture and assembly, is what it says on the packet, really, which is it's something that requires you to think about the design in terms of not just in terms of the finished product. I mean, and using the word product there is key, because it's actually sort of turning design and the mindset and thinking about design for housing and residential in this case into a product for a customer, and all the lessons that we've learned from all of these other industries, including industries like mobile phones, smartphones, for example. That customer satisfaction is critical, okay, and if you, and a product that you're developing and making, that you're offering to the market, it needs to be something that the customer is going to want and is going to be happy with and satisfied with. So really, you have to sort of think about the product and the customer, but in terms of the actual design as well, you need to be thinking about actually how you're going to deliver through this process actually to a real physical building site. And we use lots of digital tools, digital twins, and BIM, building information management, to sort of assist and coordinate through that process from beginning to end. But really, you have to start, for me, you have to sort of start at the end and then work back to the beginning of the process in terms of DfMA. The information that you're producing as well needs to be information that is appropriate and useful for the production process. For the factory, whatever the system is that you're using, it needs to be able to be used by the manufacturers in terms of turning that design information produced by the consultant teams, the architects, the structural engineers, the mechanical, electrical, public health engineers, coordinate all that information. But then turning that, as I say, into information that the producers and the manufacturers can then use in their factory to then make their product. And again, we use a lot of digital tools for, we can use a lot of digital tools for that. So in the CLT volumetric factory I was working in, we were using, we had two 5-bed CNC cutting machines, 5-axis CNC cutting machines, which was actually being, the machines were being driven by a software that was actually derived directly from the design information software that the consultant team had been using. So it was a direct transfer of data, rich data, from one exercise and discipline, if you like, into another set of exercises and processes. But maintaining what again, the term we use over here in the UK a lot, but this is all about maintaining the golden thread, if you like, of the essence of the both the vision for the client in terms of their design and the product, but also the making sure that the compliance, making sure that all of the need for health and for safety and performance also always maintained through the whole process. To the point where actually, we also design and implement post-occupancy evaluation strategies at the end of the sort of the delivery period of the design and the building, so that we actually can capture the feedback from the customers and the people who are living in these buildings. They can feedback information both to the designers, to the manufacturers, because. So really, I suppose what I'm saying about DfMA is that it's a holistic process. It doesn't actually have, in essence, a beginning or an end. It's a continuous process of improvement as you move through different projects, capturing all the feedback through all of those processes in order to continually improve the next projects that go through.
Yeah, and I think that's key, and very much it's that sort of start or not even the start, it could be the end of that process, but it is that cyclical sort of industrialized system that we're looking to build, and obviously it's a key part of that. So I think that's really interesting. But as you were saying, I think it was really great how you think about it in terms of the end product and the consumer. That's how we think about construction. Everyone thinks of projects, not products, and it is, every project is bespoke. Every project has an end goal, end vision that is different from one another. And I think actually quite often that is what causes this, not fear, but perhaps concern around DfMA, is, all of this talk about productization, it could crush creativity, it will take work away from designers. I mean, what do you typically say to that? I mean, what are perhaps some of the biggest misconceptions you find among the design community when it comes to DfMA and sort of this process that we really need to change and obviously, I suppose help people to realise the opportunities that are there?
Well, so Nicole, some of the difficulties that we have really been experiencing in the last couple of decades as a result of the, if I can call it, the more traditional or conventional forms of contracting here in the UK, was the sort of the emergence, development, and the really coming to the fore of what we call design and build contracting over here in the UK. Which with the different forms of setup of main contractors that also, if you like, went hand in hand in this with this development of contracting principles. From an architect's point of view and from a consultant's point of view, I mean, what this really led to was a sort of a situation where the architects and the designers were really being contracted to produce a design for intent. Which the contractor, the main contractor, who then would probably predominantly subcontract to a variety of specialist contractors, subcontract those work packages out, going through a process of what euphemistically gets called value engineering over here in the UK, which is, I'm afraid, is a term for basically stripping out all the good stuff and reducing the budget, basically, if I'm being harsh about it, and unfortunately then also leading to other cutting corners and things not being done properly, where we have in the last couple of years, we've all been going through quite a lot of soul searching here in the UK as a result of the Grenfell Tower fire, where and I probably shouldn't say too much about it in detail because it's currently going through inquiry, but where there does appear that corners were cut and things happened that people didn't know about until it was too late. So this sort of move toward design and build, sort of, I'm afraid to say, driving to the lowest cost all the time. The adversarial nature of subcontracting against very, very large sort of main contracting organisations and consultants who are only really appointed to produce designs to an intent level, because that would then be passed on to the specialists to take forward. And as a result, I think that there's been a sort of slight disassociation of the consultants from the design process beyond that design intent stage. Which then leads to a whole range, can then lead to a whole range of quite fundamental problems, which has been becoming increasingly transparent to people, and which is why there's this increasing drive to make change. And really, I see this as an opportunity for architects and consultants to actually significantly re-engage in the design process, actually, and not just to leave it as a design intent and then leave it for other specialists to finish off, hopefully, but actually the architects and the consultant teams actually should re-engage in the sense case of, learning how to put things together again, and actually knowing how to put things together, and knowing what type of screw is needed in order to put these two pieces of timber together, and also then how many screws are actually needed, so that you actually procure only the number of screws that you need, not the number of screws plus 10%, because you're going to waste a lot because you don't really know, and actually, a lot of the bad behaviours that have become the norm as a result of this type of contracting and these types of traditional conventional behaviours, has then subsequently led to, a lot of waste, a lot of unhappy customers, a lot of unfinished works, and then, dare I say, a lot of unsafe, even life safety critical issues that have then subsequently come up. And really, I think that, as I say, I am an architect, although I've not been in practice for over 20 years, but actually for me, it's about architects in particular, refinding a little bit of what being an architect is about. And I was going to say what it used to be about, but it is what it's about. It's, and it's why we go to university for 7 years, and we go through a very rigorous process of training and learning, and which is about somebody taking responsibility, really, Nicole, for taking responsibility for the architecture, but architecture is something that is built and that actually is in the real world. And one of the reasons I joined HTA Design, Nicole, was also because of their focus on housing. There's a very big demand for housing here in the UK. And even that's become even more polarised, really, as a result of the recent pandemic issues. There's a very big demand. The supply is very much in the hands of a small number of volume house builders. I think that central government here in the UK is increasingly taking the view that it does actually need to step in and provide more support. And there's all sorts of new policy initiatives that I and HTA have been involved in over the last couple of years, a few years really. I can tell you some more about that after. But it's about it's about actually trying to focus the energy partly in places where it's needed, and focusing the attempt to improve the behaviour and change the mindset and change the behaviour, in areas that are really really important. One of the other sort of key policy initiatives that's actually just been released, Nicole, actually just yesterday, is the government playbook. Okay, and the government playbook is a very high level, top government level publication, if you like, and that really, again, as has been identified in other sort of government publications, reports over the last couple of years, partly as a result and reflecting strategies in Mark Farmer's Modernise or Die report. It is really about pushing the adoption of MMC forward across all portfolio, all sectors, certainly in terms of government development, housing, education, healthcare, prisons, other infrastructure projects, but really, pushing MMC, modern methods of construction, and then inherently design for manufacture and assembly, pushing that forward and making that the first consideration, really. Something that HTA do excel at is actually about creating good places, good quality places for people to live. Okay, and something that's affordable as well, but also something that's of exceptional quality, and something that can be delivered quickly. And of course, one of the first things I learned as a project manager was that, was the PM triangle of time, quality, and cost. Yeah. And actually, and that if you pull on one, it has an impact on the others. Well, actually, DfMA, modern methods of construction, in my view, and with the right training and the right mindset and the right right approach and the right collaboration between the consultants, the manufacturers, the clients, the developers, the customers in the end, okay, actually I think that, you know, we can improve all points of that project management triangle actually without having a detrimental effect on any of the others. And that's, you know, and you know, I mean, you know, I have a 19-year-old son, and you know, and I want him to have some options. You know, he doesn't have very many at the moment. I also have a 10-year-old son. You know, and I actually I expect that when my 10-year-old son, you know, in another 20 or 30 years' time, you know, I do think he will look back and he'll say, what, you used to build houses brick by brick in muddy fields? So what, you guys really used to do that, or you used to build it out of you know, out of matchsticks? You know, I think you know, another term we use here a lot in the UK increasingly now is pre-manufactured value, PMV. You know, and that is you know, the amount of value, quite simply in terms of the cost of the work that is being produced and prefabricated off-site, and that is then being subsequently delivered to site. And the more you can maximise that pre-manufactured value, that PMV, then you know, the more you're sort of, the more benefit and that you're taking. You know, not just in terms of the cost, but in terms of the you know, the reduced programme, the reduction in the pollution and the noise. On local residents, you know, as I say, the higher quality, the more affordability, you know.
We are seeing it go that way. I think, you know, like you say, with the initiatives that we're seeing from sort of a government standpoint, from the support of associations, but also just from, I mean, even in the last year, you know, the realization that actually having a safe, controlled space for people to manufacture in, you know, is the ideal to keep things going and keep things rolling. We were fortunate enough to see construction as you know, a sort of essential industry through this year, but it's certainly not been one that's, you know, got away unscathed, to say it, you know, lightly. But I think, you know, that's opening doors. We're seeing more people come into this, and we are seeing more people willing to, you know, start thinking differently and change their mindsets and collaborate a little bit more. But for those teams that are coming to this and, you know, perhaps haven't worked on a project like this before, you know, are coming and they're ready to embrace, but they don't really know how. I mean, what advice would you give to a team that are coming to this for the first time and you know, looking to start to really industrialize their workflows?
Sure. Well, first of all, give me a call, and then I can help. Yeah. So Nicole, you know, just something you just saying there about, you know, something about what's happened in the last year, but you know, which is another sort of, you know, key benefit of really this type of process and approach, which is predictability. Okay, because you know, particularly here in the UK, where it's sort of raining 80% of the time, or it's blowing a gale, and you know, and we still persist in actually, you know, but we still persist in building in these conventional, traditional ways, you know, in this weather where everything is getting soaking wet. Things can be, you know, especially at high level, can be being blown around left, right, and centre. You know, I mean, where it's not safe. It's probably not being done to the quality that it should be being done at. You know, so when you're actually obviously working in off-site manufacturing, well, of course, you know, it's all done in a controlled environment, and it's predictable. You know, I mean, in fact, that's one of the greatest challenges really with marrying, if you like, off-site manufacturing with traditional and conventional construction, is that, you know, nonetheless, at the end of the day, Nicole, what you make in the factory, the product you make, you do have to deliver it to a real, you know, real life site that's probably muddy and wet and raining as well. But, you know, but if you've thought about those things in the right way at the beginning, and that you've embedded a sort of a strategic level of thinking into the design, okay, and into the assembly, then when you do get to that point in time, you know, then you should have then considered what those risks might be. So, for example, if you're building up and tall, you know, you might have mast climbers that you are installing as part of the modular or the panelized build process and system. You might have mast climbers that are being sort of attached onto that system as it's rising with platforms that are then aligned under the mast climbing system, that's actually rising and actually putting on well, you probably have a layer of sort of cavity barriers and fire barriers that's going on just below the actual works of the assembly of the system. And then just below that you have another platform that's then actually coming up right behind that, actually putting on the cladding panels, so that when you actually get to the top, okay, you're actually putting the roof onto the top of that system build as soon as you've done it. But you have to sort of think about that and coordinate that through the early parts of the design phase in order for it to be successful. And it's not something you're just trying to add on or bolt on, or worse still, that you haven't thought about it. And you're building this system and you're building up high, and it's getting soaking wet and it's getting blown around, and then you've got a really big problem. So for anybody sort of starting out, if you like, Nicole, with this, I mean, here in the UK, so I tend to work a lot on projects and in policy, external to HTA, but I also do a lot of work in HTA as well, with the staff in HTA in terms of educating and training, and also learning from them what the problems are on particular projects. That they might be working on, I mean, whether it's traditional or not, although increasingly here, as I say, the government are now actually, incorporating a very clear drive for people to adopt MMC as part of their project thinking, if you like, and to consider that from the outset. We've been involved in a variety of programs that are running here and that have been running here in the UK for over 12 months now. And again, partly why we're so busy is that there's more and more that's now coming online, if you like. So we've been involved in there's a government organisation over here called the Construction Innovation Hub. We've been involved in work with the Manufacturing Technology Centre over here in the UK as well, developing a platform design programme, so you can Google and have a look at that. We've been very much involved in developing what's called a PAS over here in the UK, a publicly accessible standard. It's going to be called PAS 1025, which is basically a code of practice for primarily focused at procurement and methods of procurement for off-site manufacturing, because actually how you procure systems is very different than how you might normally go about procuring either packages of works or materials or labour. And actually, it's really probably more about forming alliances. It's about long-term relationships, collaboration. It's about pipeline, because if you're going to invest millions and millions of pounds in building a factory, then you want that factory to be running and operational as much as possible, and earning its keep. And actually there are a number of manufacturers here in the UK already that do actually have capacity, as we've recently discovered. Myself and Rory Bergin, a partner for Sustainable Futures, whose team I'm part of at HTA, along with Cast Consultancy, who are a big consultant here in the UK, which is led by Mark Farmer, who was the author of a government commissioned report called Modernise or Die a few years ago. We carried out a survey of all the key manufacturers here in the UK, and actually discovered that there's actually a lot of spare capacity already in the housing manufacturing sort of sector here in the UK. And actually, it's not about necessarily just about creating new factories all the time. It's about using the factories that we've currently got to their maximum capacity. Establishing long-term pipelines and relationships, with good feedback and good lessons learned loops in there, so that you're doing that continuous improvement. So it's actually about aggregation of the demand, as well as actually also looking at where there is a requirement or a need to maybe set up new manufacturing facilities. So there's the PAS. There's a number of other policy initiatives. There's a report that Mark Farmer and Mike Diath from HTA Design recently published here in the UK, which is really focused at that sort of approach to aggregation. We've also been doing a lot of work with a number of housing associations and local authorities in and around central London, who are increasingly now starting to talk to each other about how if they join together and form alliances, how they can then they can create more meaningful long-term pipeline for this supply. And then so the two other things I just wanted to mention, Nicole. One was so we're also very much involved with a consortium on a new DfMA digital toolkit, which is programmed to be released, I think, in the early part of next year. So probably not long after the Prefab Connect event at the end of January. And I hope I will be able to have some images, some preview images. The audience will be the first to see them, actually. I hope. So I'll be able to show those in January. But yeah, the DfMA toolkit is really it's going to be an online, a virtual interactive tool that will actually sort of do a lot of what I've just been doing, which is hopefully, and a bit better than I'm doing, I hope, explain what DfMA is, but put that into a context in terms of, what the things you ought to be thinking about and considering at the beginning, and the things that you ought to be thinking and considering at the end, which actually in themselves link up as well anyway. What we've done with the toolkit, the DfMA toolkit, sorry, I should say that it's called CoLab because it is a collaborative effort. So we're part of a consortium with L&Q, London and Quadrant, who are one of the biggest housing developers here in the UK, who we've also been doing a lot of work with on DfMA. They actually have a 10-year DfMA roadmap that we've been working with them on, along with Hawkins Brown, who are also another residential architect and DfMA specialist here in the UK, and a company called Virtual Viewing, who actually do digital interface work, and actually are the guys who are going to be sort of creating the user interface and the experience of actually how you engage with this DfMA toolkit. We've tried to use the RIBA plan of work, which I don't know whether the audience in the US will be overly familiar with it, but most people generally do have an awareness of that plan of work, which is it's a tool as well. It's a very simple, basic tool, but it's predominantly really more focused, I would suggest now, on traditional, conventional sort of work stages. Obviously we have a start and a middle and an end, but really with DfMA, it's really about it's about overlaps. It's about going forwards and looking backwards at the same time, and vice versa even sometimes, and this this continuous learning process through lessons learned. So the toolkit will also not only explain what DfMA is and put that into if you like a context that hopefully people might find easier to understand, i.e. the plan of work, but it's also going to give a lot of case studies. It's also going to give information, not in detail in terms of telling people how to do it. It's actually about sort of giving examples and giving suggestions and giving guidance and helping people to navigate this process. But because it's interactive and digital, it will actually allow you to sort of be very high level and to look at it from quite a distance, or to actually zoom in and get quite granular about wherever you might be on your journey, to actually get some advice and guidance. And then there'll be a cross-reference to all of the current and relevant sort of other sources of information, which and there's lots of other people producing lots of other very interesting pieces of work. Just currently, the Construction Innovation Hub, I've just been doing a lot of work on a digital value toolkit, which is very interesting because that picks up on lots of different aspects of value, as opposed to doing what we do in design and build, which is value engineering, and we strip all the good value out, and that can't be right.
Yeah. No, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to ask sort of what exciting things are going on here. I know there's so much, and it's so great to hear everyone coming together to do that. Like you say, whether you're, you know, here in the UK, whether you're in the US, whether you're around the world, you know, it's all about sharing this experience at the end of the day. Every project is different, but absolutely, the more we can do to stop reinventing the wheel, keep sharing, and keep that knowledge growing, obviously, you know, the quicker we can grow this globally as well, and make it work.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you know, so you know, I'm obviously reasonably familiar with North America. I have spent time over there in the past, and was actually lucky enough to work in New York for a short while, some many years ago. And actually, ETFE and ETFE systems are increasingly on growing in popularity in North America. So you know, I think there's actually, you know, there's a lot of synergy, of course, and there's a lot of lessons to be shared, lessons learned shared actually between all players really. But you know, I mean, there's some very interesting developments in North America, particularly with regards to the use of cross-laminated timber, CLT. You've got, you know, very interesting, very large organisations like HTA, for example, that are really sort of, you know, taking a lead with those, you know, panelised systems and using timber, and CLT, which is great. And I really do hope that we can talk more about that in the future here in the UK. You know, DfMA really is not it's not country specific. It's a process. And actually, it can be, it can be used anywhere. And as I say, really, Nicole, I mean, you know, it's not even that we're, you know, that we're reinventing any wheels necessarily in that sense either. You know, I mean, as I always do point out to a lot of people, you know, I mean, you know, unitized cladding, just by way of an example. I mean, you know, here in the UK, we've been working in sort of with DfMA principles for many years. So a lot of people don't really realise it because they just sort of do it. They just did do it and don't really think about it. But you know, delivering a unitized cladding a system to a building, you know, that goes through a DfMA process, of course. You know, in Europe, in mainland Europe, and particularly with regards systems like CLT and glulam, actually in Europe, you know, they have many very well developed and mature systems in place there, delivering you know, all types of sectors and buildings at different scales. You know, as they do in the United States, of course. You know, and particularly with regards timber frame in particular. You know, I mean, you know, and I know that the more, you know, the more, if you like, the more advanced and sophisticated timber frame businesses, you know, are quite significantly automated. And you know, and again, this is all DfMA. So you know, it's not new. I mean, you know, and I've been doing it for over 20 years, but you know, but now it's got quite a clear sort of acronym that everybody can latch onto. You know, it's easier now to talk about it with people. And actually, you know, you know, and there's a lot of enthusiasm. Just a final thing to say on that, Nicole, is that, you know, so I'm also increasingly involved in, if you like, facing towards academia as well, and sort of students, you know, and really, you know, and the you know, the next generations coming through are the ones who you know, who will really need to pick it up, who will pick it up. And will really drive it forward even more. As I say, to the point where, as I say, my youngest son will be, really, you used to do that in muddy fields, really?
Yeah. And actually, it's exciting. You know, we're starting to see the higher education institutions sort of bring this in and actually start to embrace this, you know, and work with the industry to help. And a lot of what we're seeing as well is maybe they're not new concepts, but definitely being facilitated in different ways with the advent of technology. You know, all of these different digital systems that we just haven't been using before. You know, even this year, if you thought that we were going to have all of our meetings on Zoom and Teams, which is nothing compared to, you know, digital twins and all of the tools that are used to facilitate offsite construction, you know, you just wouldn't believe it. I mean, what are you most excited about that's coming out, that we're really starting to develop as a tool to obviously, you know, push us forward?
the bigger issue is really is climate change, and that is the bigger emergency really right now. And we've all necessarily had to take our focus off that really a little bit over the last 12 months. But actually, that problem hasn't gone away and isn't going to go away unless we do something about it. Okay, so I mean, we certainly as a practice at HTA Design, but again, just on a personal level, and I've really picked up on a lot of this through doing my work with cross-laminated timber as well, which is a fabulous material to build with, because it actually captures carbon as well rather than releases it. So it's as a system, as a sort of a holistic system, the use of timber and CLT, I'm evangelical about it, but I'd say we're in slightly different times here in the UK at the moment. So yes, I mean, it is very much about a long-term view, Nicole. I mean, it's not so much about being excited about next year. It's actually being excited about real change, okay, and real change, not just here in the UK, but around the world, okay, and a real change in mindset, in that we need to refocus on the climate emergency, and we need to be doing things about that, and modern methods of construction and design for manufacturing, assembly, or production friendly design, these are very powerful and particularly game-changing approaches. The construction sector globally, is a major polluter, it's a major waste generator. We can't persist with this. It is not sustainable. So we have to introduce these new methodologies and use these new mindsets to get to make proper change. To be more efficient, to be more streamlined, to not be as wasteful. To deliver things that are going to save energy. To deliver things that but things that people will be happy with, and and as I say, that are in terms of housing and residential, that are good places to live, and that are affordable. Okay, and that and as obviously these processes and systems become more embedded and the behaviours change and become more normal, actually we'll then find that the momentum will gather, and we'll get then these continuous improvement cycles, that will get better and better and quicker and faster, that's where we've got to be heading to, but that could be another decade. I mean, I wouldn't really like to put a time frame to it, but it's not going to be next year. But I will keep doing my best to sort of make the changes and spread the message, and to educate and to train and to guide, and really to build confidence, Nicole. I mean, you mentioned it earlier on about where actually maybe some things aren't used because there's a lack of confidence. Well, you're right. It's about building confidence, right? You've got to build the confidence first, and get consensus and get people on board, and collab, which is an art, okay? Collaborating openly with your peers and your colleagues. Again, this is partly as a result of the design and build culture and the adversarial nature of contracting that's developed as a result here in the UK, where people don't talk and people don't collaborate, and post-occupancy evaluation doesn't happen. Nobody knows what happens at the end, because everybody just runs away. Everybody runs away as quickly as possible to avoid getting caught up in any battles or whatever that might be there, and like you said, and then it's and then it's the next project, and we've forgotten all about that, and we're going to start again, and this is crazy, really. I mean, excited for next year. Well, I mean, I think obviously some of the tools and the products that we and I'm working on, I think are going to be very exciting, in terms of opening up and building confidence, to facilitate more people to then carry that forward and integrate it maybe into their project or their work, which they might not have been considering before they actually got access to this information. So Yeah, I mean, I mean, here in the UK, I mean, I think it's going to be still a few more years yet, but I do hope that we can get back, we can get timber and CLT back into the conversation over the next few years as well.